We'll have a panel discussion house, we have all the speakers come to this. Okay. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, really great talk, very interesting. And already we saw that Dr. Brown pointed out the often contradiction, for instance, in our talk, the previous talk came about the compounds actually in meat which causes increase in cardiovascular disease, identified as the causal factors why red meat causes. Now she shows it's chicken. How do we get that together? Right. So Dr. Brown might perhaps comment on the analytic techniques which we want.
Yeah, well, I actually have a question. Many of us have questions for you. Why did you pick to replace fat, saturated fat from red meat by the dairy?
Well, in the UK, so in UK, dairy is actually fast, followed by the cookies and cookies and cookies seems to be the contributor that is a little different for protein. It was basically one of the
Why? I mean, fat, you was saying saturated fat from whatever sources, it's still saturated fat. So what exactly is your replacement achieve? How do you interpret your finding?
Why is the cheese fat better?
Right, they're all chemically identical, I suppose.
yeah. I think,
And why don't you, in fact, use energy? Because dairy can. Why don't you sort of use energy? Because like there must be something in dairy that's different from something in red meat that leads to the differences on the outcome of your interest. So I think folks are asking you what exactly are those factors that cause what you see. So it must not be saturated fat, right?
indeed, research basically shows that the food matrix is important. Means actually symptoms to issues with dairy contribute to the issue. For instance, what we basically, for instance, the work association when the function was replaced, what find the paper that kind of investigate what is the positive, but I think the number is my main council out both low per
I just had a quick comment about the saturated fat being more equal. In dairy, you're going to have the lower chain saturated fat. In chicken and pork, you're going to have C16 common pay. And in some of the beef, you're going to have a higher C18 content. And so this is one of my questions was to follow up to the whole panel. How will we deal with food frequency questionnaires? When I think about saturated fats or fats in, let's use beef. All the way down from the leanest cuts being around the sirloin or filet mignon, all the way down to the fattiest cuts of the beef short ribs. And some of the ground beef for the actually to take back in and grind it in. And you have the chicken breast is sirloin breast, depending on how you get it, or the cut of beef can be about the same. But there are tiny bits of beef that are leaner than a chicken leg. You're getting into when people report meat. Well, are you eating filet mignon? Are you eating pork? Are you eating short ribs? Because each one of these is going to contribute a different amount of fat. And then the different meats are going to contribute different calories. And so you're going to get a different composition. And so that's something to consider. The whole granular thing you get with the data where the RCP will get. But then again,
We're talking about foods and dietary.
And so I think that was great. And so the food, I think it's not necessarily, it's not just the survey, that the key that's the issue, it's the nutrient that's being used. Right, so I think that's where we need to put some effort, 24-hour week for one, dairy exposure, but then the nutrient file, and an update, so we that's that means you a great big grain that it brings back to that.
That's very true. There, in other words, there was alluded to having at the time we were in Idaho, and it was actually so the chemical assays on the food itself, and it was exactly how to improve the composition table. Jump up. Another point that would be because of objects that are inside of the root of the kind of root of separated. But yes, it's in fact, perhaps in some cases we will not take into account in other potential pollutants that can affect the outcome. So I think that we need to explore.
Well, it's interesting this discussion has cleared deeply into mechanisms for standing back and saying, what is the phenomenon you're trying to explain here? And I think the phenomenon is mind. But actually, that's the big question, is whether exchanging one food for another, one heap of food for another will make a difference. And that's looking for the phenomenon. And I just wonder, I mean, being naughty, I'd like Andrew to comment on the language being used in the last presentation. I think this is a friendly environment where presenters are not going to feel mortified if we detect the paper in particular, but whether you think implied causation might be, is your paper public? Is it not? Yeah.
This one isn't published yet, but the previous paper.
You know, you can see things you don't really record it. Being a thing. Probably goes back to the National Report in 1983. Before that time, people talked about food. And a lot of the Americans were for food, dairy. In the 1950s, studies comparing dairy foods versus animal-based foods, lard and dairy foods. A very big effect for things when we use food. Locking them all together and saying we're going to talk about saturated fats as if it's the same thing has been deeply misleading. And thank you for the comment earlier on that. It's a little bit like saying we're going to be more methodical in our analysis of dairy or plant foods, and we'll group together all the solanum products that we eat. That includes potatoes and tomatoes in the same group, but also deadly nightshade. Right, we don't think about what's inside the grouping. So inside and saturated into the content.
I'll take the bait on the causal language question. It's something I think about, and I think you did a pretty good
So there's, yeah, the implied causation is always there, but I didn't hear you say this showed a causal link. You said you thought an association was lower, so implication is fuzzy, but I didn't hear anything explicit, so I took the bait on that. But for the fatty acids, so the afterlife. That was something we focused on, an advocate of that, fatty acid. And, there would be different ways to apply different fatty acids. And, the weight is typically uric acid. Zero. It's due to not really having them. And the American Heart Association eventually did and said, yes, we recognize that fatty, all saturated fatty acids do not have the same impact, but it's too hard to lay. Fast forward to the trans fast conversation, and all of a sudden it was okay to exact same technology, exact same method. They used to measure stearic acid as trans fatty acids, and they were elated to be able to label trans fats without breaking down the different types of saturated. And then when the idea of added sugar came along, which analytically can't really see a difference in the way they analyze it. They were also still happy, which the idea of added sugar was completely by human problem. Somebody says they put it in there as a way that it's analyzed. So I think I mean, you're right that it goes back a ways in the idea of lumping and splitting which nutrients are put together and how. And it comes out in the various analyses we do to get, all the way to some of the metabolomic type of work. But at least as a nutrient labeling for claims and a lot of analyses, it tends to be been together quite a bit. Sometimes on purpose, sometimes because that's just how the data show up, and so that's the analysis.
Very good. Last question.
Yeah, well, maybe I don't know who in some work, because it's very difficult to separate the saturated fatty acid from the foods actually. High correlation about 0.9, I would say, with actually dairy or meat, so that's the replacement are food reflect is the whole food as well. And of course, not causal, it's implications, as you said, correctly. Yeah, I had a question actually to Andrew about the Goldberg. You mentioned the Goldberg. What other methods do we actually have to do sensitivity analysis if we want to say something about the dietary intake, overestimation or underestimations in intake?
So I would like to hear others' thoughts on that as well. But briefly, I think of it in terms of a distribution. So there does tend to be a tendency to underreport, which means that it's somebody's recollection of what they did. So I am very concerned when we throw out data based on somebody's recollection. Let's say it's normally distributed. You say, I don't trust these ones, and it's a systematic bias download. You just chopped off a bunch of people at a certain level. That is a completely legitimate recollection to them. The people just above that, we say, well, that was close enough. We'll go ahead and include it. One thing with the Goldberg rule is that it was meant for adjusting population estimates, not the associations, and somebody did correct me on that at one point, that method was never meant to recover association and to recover population estimates, but I think knowing the limitations of self-report, the idea that we're going to say some people are more believable than others, I think it's a good physical for that. Does anybody else have a thought on plausible, implausible?
For my students, we started so we actually people in, but we bring it closer to the meeting. Right? Yeah, so that's what we you can't take it from people where everyone be a reason.
Okay, we'd like to thank, we have to close this session unfortunately. We've hit over time, I'd like to thank the speakers for
It's very, 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 very